Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to help you catch up on Christmas. Yeah, I know it's a while away, but it'll be here before you know it. It's so nice to have a batch of cards all ready to go before the holiday hits. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them online at pegstamps.com, and all of their holiday peg stamps are on sale for 25% off if you use the coupon code HOLIDAY25. So I'm using a few of their sets here to make these cute little Christmas cards, and I find it way less daunting to just make a few ahead of time and then just add them to a basket. That way when Christmas rolls around, it's just easy to grab them and send them out, and then I have a nice variety instead of all of them being the same and me getting very bored with making the same thing over and over again. So originally when I was gonna make these cards, I was thinking that I would use their beautiful mason jar set that you've probably seen me use many times and you're probably sick of looking at. But then I realized that I actually had a die that I picked up at a stamp show that did little mason jars, and I thought, you know what? That is really cute. I'm going to use that instead. Now, I did try some where I stamped the mason jar onto the tag, but the tag was just a little bit too big for that to look kind of normal, so I decided to work right on these tags. I'm going to work with a variety of different stamps here. I've got some ornaments and some gingerbread men. I used that bow. The bow was really cute. I used it on the one I stamped flat, so I would recommend that if you wanted to just keep it flat because it is very pretty. And on this kind of gray paper, when I went in with a white gel pen and highlighted, I thought it looked really nice. But that is still in there. But I'm basically going to be using some holly, Christmas ornaments, gingerbread men, and candy cane, and I'll have all of this linked up down below in the video description. And these stamps are available in money-saving sets or individually, and of course there's the sale right now, so you don't want to miss that. So the first thing I'm going to do is do some inking on some of the little kind of accessories that came with this little die. And this die was from Impression Obsession, but if you have a, you can always hand cut it too, but if you had like a digital machine, you could always find a like a cutting file for that. So what I'm going to do is just take my ink pad and ink the edges of the lids here. And then I'm inking it so that I get a little shiny spot in the middle so it looks metallic. So I'm just inking in from each edge, starting it off the paper so it grabs the texture and just looks really natural. And so if you're going to do this and you're going to make up a bunch, do it in like assembly line fashion, like I'm doing all the lids there. Now I'm going to stamp all the little fabric pieces. So I love this holly. There's a lot of different holly options at pegstamps.com, and I really liked this one here because it's one of the jumbo ones, so it covers a lot more space. Now I'm going to be layering this, so I'm only going to be able to see the bottom of this this little kind of skirt, lid skirt, or whatever you want to call it. But it's nice when you can make a really full wreath or garland or whatever because you have a nice thick stamp like that. Now we are going to use some kind of watercolory techniques, and I'm going to be wicked fancy, and I'm going to press my ink pad on my baby wipes container and use that to watercolor with. I'm just going to pick up this with I'm using a water brush, but I don't have any water in it because I don't care for this brand of water brush too much, so I'm just using it dry. It was just the most convenient one. And the thing I do notice about Memento, it is a water-based ink, but it doesn't really run as much as other inks do when you're doing these techniques. I set those pieces aside to dry. Now we're going to stamp in our jars. So I'm going to start off with candy canes because this is the easiest one because we're just using one type of ink. You want to make sure that you turn your stamp and you get these candy canes going in all sorts of directions because that's how they would end up in a jar. They would be upside down and right side up and sideways, and it just kind of adds a little whimsy and makes it fun. And you don't have to worry about masking. You can let them overlap and they'll look really great, which makes this really easy to do if you're doing a bunch of cards ahead of time. Okay, I think that's probably plenty. So now what I'm going to do to make this look more like glass is I'm going to take this blue ink pad. You can use whatever is, like, you can use a blue, a gray, a green, anything that's not too super dark. And then again, I'm going to press this on my wipes box to get a little ink, and I'm gonna just kind of paint on some of the blue color. Like I mentioned with the Memento, I've noticed this with their markers and with their ink pads that the ink doesn't really smudge too much, like after you've stamped it. I'm working on watercolor paper, and the Memento ink is not blurring, like that red ink is not blurring when I'm going in and adding a little bit of like glassy overlay there. So that's kind of a neat effect. Now I'm going to set this aside to dry, and we're going to work on our next design. And this one is probably my favorite. This is the different Christmas ornaments, and I just really thought these were really sweet, and they stamp so well, even though there's so much detail in there. I like to start with my biggest, because remember how we're actually filling a jar. I'm always saying that it's like filling a jar with rocks. You stamp your biggest things in first, and then you can go in and stamp your smaller things. And I'm just going to kind of keep alternating around with these colors until I have filled stuff up. With the ornaments, you probably don't want to overlap them because they'll get kind of muddy, so you just want to kind of just lay them next to each other, but do turn your ornaments around as you go so that you can get that really natural look. Maybe do one more blue one. Make sure it's going in a different direction. There we go. And again, I'm going to do the same technique on the jar. I'm going to ink the edges with the blue, so you kind of get that ball jar blue look I really like. And we're going back in with our brush. I just picked up some of that color that I put there before, and just dragging a little bit in front of some of the ornaments and adding some around it. You don't want to get mud. Now, we'll set this aside to dry. Now, the next one I'm going to do is going to be a little different. Oh, there is something I want to show you that I realized with my other one. While this is still wet, if you want to kind of paint in a little bit of a shadow with the ink pad, you can do that just with the tip of the Memento ink pad. Because it's smaller, you can get in there a little easier. But just remember, once you press the ink down, it's not going to want to soften that much. For some reason, the Memento just works really well. It just kind of just doesn't budge once you put it on the paper. So it's just something to consider. It's very much unlike distress ink for that reason. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is the gingerbread. So we're going to work in a little bit different of a of layers here, and the thing with the gingerbread is I'm using two different shades of brown. One is a Memento, and I know will stay fairly fairly indelible once I stamp it down. So I'm going to do all of these lighter kind of colors. This is potter's clay. It's just kind of like a burnt sienna like color. It's very pretty, and I'm going to stamp in a bunch of these guys. If you get ink on the edge, I'm working some scrap paper. What I'll do is just kind of rock around the edge, get that ink off of there. Make sure to have some upside down ones, some right side up ones. Kind of fill in. Now I know this is going to dry good, but I know I'm going to use another darker ink pad, but it is not one that wants to dry quickly. So I'm going to do my blue layer before I put on some of those darker gingerbread men. And the reason I'm going with a darker one is because I can overlap with that darker ink. It is so dark, it'll cover up whatever I have underneath. And so, so I don't have to worry about having that run after, and I don't have to worry about some of it showing through and some of it not. So I'm going in and just gonna throw that in, put some of that color here and there, and you can see you can make a batch up really quickly because you do not have to spend a lot of time. These are really quick little projects, and I've seen very gorgeous Christmas cards that obviously took hours to make, but I have a pretty large Christmas list, and I don't have time to spend an hour on a Christmas card. I need to streamline my process a little bit and make it more doable. Now, I do want to let this dry before I stamp the gingerbread men on there, so rather than go out of order on my projects, I'm going to pause it and come back when this is dry. Okay, now I'm back, and I've got that darker ink pad, and you can see on the stamp how dark it is. I'm going to be very careful not to get ink on the ridges if I can help it. And I'm going to stamp especially in some of those areas where I have, where I didn't stamp too carefully before, and I have kind of like those circular ridges. And there we can fill that jar right up with gingerbread men. And you can see that how long that ink takes to dry. That is still glossy. That is that's Vivid ink by Colorbox, I believe, at clearsnap.com. And I will tell you that I bought these at a yard sale and they're like still super juicy, so that tells you something about the ink, although I don't know if they're still made anymore because I got them at a yard sale. So while this one's drying, we're going to go ahead and assemble our tags. So this is kind of fun and easy. I'll assemble these two while that one's drying. And basically what you want to do is just layer them up, and for this I actually like to use a wet glue, and this is just Mod Podge. I happen to like it quite a bit, and I just put it in these little fine tip applicators. So I'm going to put a little bit there over the lid area. And if you're doing a lot of gluing, like you're doing your Christmas cards, rather than replacing the little pin in here every time, what I recommend doing is putting like a little wet paper towel in a dish and keeping it like that. These dishes are great because they have little fluting on the edges, so they'll keep it from rolling around. But that way, if you have the tip against a wet paper towel, and that goes for any sort of fine point glue that you have, it'll keep that glue at the end and keep it from like skimming over with glue. Because when you're doing, if you're assembly lining these, I mean, maybe even you're at a craft night or you're having some friends over and you're this is like what I would do if my husband was watching a football game and I had some of if he had friends over and their wives were over and they weren't interested in football, you know, we could sit around and make a bunch of these. That just keeps your glue going and it doesn't let it harden up, and it just makes it more pleasurable to work with and less irritating, because sometimes when you're making a lot of the same card, it can get kind of frustrating and irritating. So we've got those two all put together, and I just kind of can pick it up and make sure they're all lined up real good on the back. But it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that looks pretty cute. And then we'll do the same to this one when it dries. Well, I'll do it off camera. You don't need to see me glue 20 of those. But now I'm going to show you how you can put this into a card. Okay, I've got my card supplies here, and I just buy bunches of these like invitation size cards when they go on sale at the craft store. And I'm going to start just by gluing down a panel of pattern paper, and I just get those, I like to get those 6x6 or 4x6 stacks of pattern paper when they go on sale, like for $2.50 or whatever, because it's nice to have a smaller scale for card making. And like if I got this in the 12x12, these light bulbs would be much bigger. They would be more sized for scrapbooking, and it just doesn't look as natural on a card. So when I'm cutting my backgrounds from a 6x6 paper, I always end up with these strips, and so I save them and I just kind of keep them all together, because if you're working from one pad of designer paper, you'll notice usually everything kind of goes together. So I'll pick one pad and I will make like that whole batch of cards from that same pad, and since I'll save my scraps and I know they're going to coordinate just fine with everything else I have going here. I thought the card looked pretty plain with just the tag on top of that background, so I found this die cut that I had of a wreath. It's a Simon Says stamp die cut that I got last year, and I thought this would be a great way to add a little texture. I was thinking I would go with a doily at first, but that was just a little bit too much, and I thought wreath, that's perfect for Christmas, and I could use that. Now if you have any like bits that didn't cut very well, just make sure you put that somewhere it's not going to be seen, like underneath where the tag's going to be. I notice that sometimes it's difficult to adhere really fine die cuts like this, so what I'm going to do is when I put this tag down, I'm going to make sure that my adhesive goes all the way across and catches that. But before I do that, I want to actually add some ribbon into the hole there. Just going to snip off some and just do this very simple treatment, which is folding it in half, pushing the fold through the back of the tag, and then pulling the tails through the front. And you can do that the other way too. It depends on if you want the two legs coming through like that with the knot in the back, or if you want it, just depends on what side you want to see. And then I just like to trim this and notch the end, just or trim each at an angle just so it's kind of cool looking. And some adhesive on the back of that. Go generous with it so you can get that die cut locked down really well. And right on top, center that right up. Oops, I noticed my die cut wasn't very centered. I can fix that now because the ink is not totally dry yet. That works. And I want to actually add a little bit of sparkle there. I actually should have done that before I stuck the tag down, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. This is just some glitter tape that I found at the Dollar Tree. I thought it was really pretty though. I'm just going to sneak that up and just fold the ends around the back. Or actually, you know what? I think I'll just trim it because my die cut is actually adhered to the back of my tag now. And that's what happens when you do things out of order, my friends. Teachable moment. See, you won't make that mistake because you saw me make the mistake. See how that works? It's a public service. Now I'm going to use some foam squares for this. Oh, but before I attach that down, I want to put a little bit of baker's twine around the lid to make it look like, you know, somebody just made something homemade and delicious. Or I guess you wouldn't be giving delicious Christmas ornaments to somebody, but it's pretty. And I like the red and white stripe because it reminds me of candy canes. So what I like to do is actually tie my bows on backwards, because I find that I get a better bow when I do it that way. The tails hang down instead of sticking up when I do it. So I'm going to scooch that right there. It'll probably be an awkward mess trying to tie this on camera. I try to tie this tiniest, smallest bow that I can, so then when I go to adjust it and fluff it, it doesn't get too big. It's always, you can always make those loops bigger, but you can't really make them smaller. So try to tie it as small as you can. Oh, that one's a little askew, but I like it. And now I'm going to use my foam adhesive, and I'm going to put one tiny one up at the top to keep that ribbon from sliding off. And then I'll just put a few more on here. There. And that shouldn't be enough bumpiness to make it not, to make it require extra postage or anything. But if you are concerned with that, you can always use like a wet glue or a double-sided tape. That should hold it just fine. And then just to add a little bit of sparkle, I'm going to use some self-adhesive rhinestones. I like these. These were inexpensive. Like, I don't know, I think I paid $1 for them, so certainly not a big embellishment. That's for the whole package, so you could do quite a few cards. Just one little package of these. But I recommend you start your Christmas cards soon, or New Year's cards, or whatever you like to make, because it's so much less intimidating and so much more doable than waiting till the last minute, and you can actually get it done. I know a lot of people just get so frustrated because they mean well and they mean to start it, but then they feel bad because by the end of the year they just don't have the time. So let's look at the other ones just so you can see the other little jars and how cute they are. Oh, another thing that you can do, I did it on this one, is you can take a white gel pen and you can actually, you know, add little sparkles onto the glass, make it look a little bit more glassy. Completely up to you if you want to. You can add some into the top, the metal top if you want to, just to give it a little bit more shine like I did here. It's completely up to you. I think it's a really fun project, and you know, make up a half a dozen of these, and then you'll be ahead of the game before Christmas comes. Don't forget to use the coupon HOLIDAY25 if you want to check out any of these peg stamps, these holiday themed peg stamps at Rubber Stamp Tapestry. 25% off is a great deal, and I love these because they're so easy and quick to use, and they're a lot of fun too. I want to thank you so much for watching today. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more Christmas card videos, let me know in the comments below, because I can come up with some more quick and easy ideas to help you get ready for the holiday. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.